What's up, guys? This is Casey.
And this is Coach Tom.
And this is Shot Science Overtime number 201.
201. My goodness gracious.
We're in the 2 O's now. So this is our live show, you guys. We do these as often as we can, but we try to do them Sundays, 1 p.m. Pacific time. These are kind of our opportunity to talk to you guys directly and maybe answer some of your questions or get your feedback on things or whatever. We got Philip Cohn, who's here early, and Carrie Jones. What's up? So these are not our tutorial videos or anything that is the short form. This is the long form chats. If that's not what you guys are into, that's cool. Maybe go check out some of our other videos in our library, but we're going to chat to the people that want to chat with us.
Yep.
And we like to have a topic at the top of the show that we talk about that kind of is something that will help cut out some of the learning curve, help you guys advance your game, something that we think is important or that you guys have brought up and we think is important after reading about it. And while we're doing that, you guys are sending us your questions, and as soon as we're done with our topic, we'll jump into answering your questions. Just gives us a little bit of an opportunity to wait for people to show up. Cara Jones, can't win them all, sorry. Although that is one of the easier names to pronounce that we get. Sometimes they are very difficult because they come from a different part of the world than we're from. So while we're talking about our topics, you guys send us your topics that you want to talk about, and we'll answer those as soon as we get there. And make sure that you guys are telling your friends and family to check out Shot Science and go to shotscience.com. Check out all the stuff we have going on there. If you want to get some shirts or some of the training gear that we have there, like the vertical jump box, go check that out, the All Access Pass, and make sure you check us out on all social media stuff, whether that's on Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, well, if you want to have, we have to special order that for you, but we can definitely do that. Okay, so let's get into our topic. You guys send us your questions. And Andre Sims says hello from San Francisco.
Close by. All right.
Yeah, that's just a little bit north from us. Okay, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Our topic for today is your season's over, now what? And that's kind of the time. This is the time of the year when you guys are wrapping up your seasons, if you're from the same part of the world as we are. And there's a lot of questions like, what do I do now? What should I work on? Should I work on anything? Right. Should I, plan a traveling team? Should I do whatever? So these are kind of our general thoughts on what you guys should kind of be thinking about at this time of year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So the big takeaway for us is that you should really be concentrating on individual skill development.
Yeah, that's really the truth of it. Yeah.
Because you can't really do that while you're playing for a team and really focus on it in a way where you make big leaps and jumps in terms of your abilities, right?
That's really true. One of the things that I think is really important is that you need to examine the season that you've just had and figure out, if you can, what it is that you need to do. And oftentimes, if you're playing on a team and you're going to be returning to that team next year or next season, it would be really good to sit with the coach and say, okay, coach, what do you think I need to work on to make my game stronger than it has been? And coaches will have a good idea of what it is they think you need to do.
Yeah.
Some things that are really important that often coaches will really want to be able to see you do is learn or develop better skills to get to the basket.
Yeah.
One of the things that's so important in getting to the basket is that we get pretty high percentage shots, usually, even though they're often contested. But we also get fouled when we get there often, and we get to the free throw line. One of the things that's really interesting, I'm watching this program the other day, and it was really kind of out of sync because one team at the end of the game had shot 35 free throws, and the other one had shot 2. Okay, so there's something wrong going on there. And the officials are not calling the game in one team's favor or the other. I mean, I find that very ironic that anybody could think that, even though there may be a situation where they miss calls and whatnot. But the important thing is that when you get to the free throw line for 35 shots, I mean, that is a huge, huge difference when it comes to who's going to win that basketball game.
Yeah.
If you've only got 2 free throws, you better shoot the crap out of the three-point ball in order to kind of make up that difference.
I want to say something.
Go ahead.
Zeno, you just had some messages in here that you sent to us telling us how to pronounce your name. That's cool, man. That helps us out.
Yeah, it really does.
You didn't need to delete those. And JR, what's up? Great to have you guys here. I will also say that one of the things that that you see a lot is that players don't analyze themselves in a way where they're capable of making themselves better players by the next season.
That's true.
So a lot of times, people get by or they're successful doing one thing and they kind of just ride that out.
Yeah.
And, maybe they're a really great shooter or they're really great at attacking the basket or whatever, and they don't bring in those other elements of their game that makes them even better the next time that they step on the floor the next season or whenever.
Yeah.
And so you should really be looking at kind of these imbalances or imperfections in your game, or even the skill that you do have, making that even more polished and optimal than it is in the last season that you had.
That's really true.
And when we're talking about basketball players, we always are talking about versatility and the ability to have this whole toolbox at your disposal.
Yeah.
We don't like people that are just one specific specialty, or people that are just one specific position. We want them to be good at everything. So this is the time where you start developing those skills. You don't have time to really do that during the season unless you have a ton of free time, which you typically don't because you're usually a student, you usually have a social life, and you're trying to do sports.
Right.
So the off season, typically, that's usually the time where you might even have summer break, and you might even have more time than you normally would have in general because you don't have school or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is the time where you can really take the opportunity to make your game better, and focusing on consistency, optimization, efficiency, and maybe even developing these other skills that you haven't worked on before. Right?
Yeah, it's really true. And when we talk about offensive basketball, and essentially that's what we're talking about right now, when you've got the basketball, your team possesses the basketball, there are things that you really need to be able to do to make you a well-rounded player. One of the things that Casey was mentioned here just a minute ago is that if you're a one-trick pony and you're a really good shooter, and we have one of those guys that's one of our students that plays at a local high school, what we find out, or what he found out, is this. He could shoot the basketball early in the season and be very effective with it. As the season got longer and people began to understand that he could shoot the basketball, they were able to take that away from him by crowding him on defense. And so he had nothing else to go to. We'd spend time working on certain things for him to do. For example, we want to be able to shoot off the dribble. We want to be able to shoot off the catch. We wanted to be able to create our own offense from time to time. And we had worked on those things for him, but when he would leave here and go away, he never really worked on them. All he worked on was just shooting the basketball. And so all of a sudden that was gone. His efficiency was not very good for probably the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. And those are the most important ones because that's usually when you're in league play and you're trying to get to the top of your league or at least get as high as possible. Sometimes there's a league tournament at the end, and so you want to be efficient there. So our whole focus, we were talking with him about a week ago about this, your whole focus for the off season needs to be something like this. We're going to take and continue to work on your shooting. And that's probably not going to go downhill. It may be cyclical a little bit, up and down, because that's the way shooting typically is, particularly when you're shooting 3 points, 3-point shots. But the other thing we're going to work on is we have to learn how to attack the basket off the dribble. And when you can do that, you put pressure on the defense then, because it's really difficult sometimes to stop people when they're trying to get to the basket. And when you get to the basket, you got a great opportunity to get 3 points, okay? A couple off the make, and then you get a free throw behind that, and so you're looking pretty good. Okay, so the other thing that's really important, and we kind of alluded to it a moment ago, and I think we did last week as well, we have to be able to create some shots for ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean that you take away from what your coach is trying to get done on offense, but here's a situation. Maybe you've got somebody isolated on you one-on-one on one side of the floor. What are you going to do? What have you got in your bag that you can get a shot off on that particular individual? And so those are the kind of things that we need to be working on in the off season. And even more importantly is this young guy loved shooting so much that he did not spend any time really working on shooting off the dribble, creating his own offense. He didn't do that. And so when he got to the situation where he's playing for his team, he shot the ball really well in the beginning of the season. Probably the last third of the season, he didn't shoot it so well. He didn't get opportunities to shoot it so well.
Well, and you don't have options if something's not really working for you either.
That's true.
You know, one of the things that we try to really reinforce is the fact that you guys have to be your own best coach.
Yeah, right.
And so many times we see people that just coast through, and they really don't have any kind of approach put together for how they coach themselves, essentially.
And preparation for,
yeah, and so, you know, people will go out and, you know, they say they're working on their game all summer, blah, 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 but in reality, they went out and they did a shoot-around for, you know, 45 minutes a day or even 2 hours a day, and there's no real purpose in that.
Yeah.
And, you know, you really have to have purpose and productivity going on when you're working on developing skills. You can't just go out there and casually shoot.
And just shoot around.
Yeah. And think that that's going to translate to game time activities.
Yeah.
So when you're in this off-season time, you have to really be analytical. You got to think like a coach. You know, you got to, you know, if you watch the interviews that some of these pro guys give after games, they're talking about how they have analyzed what they did, what the other team did. They were paying attention, and they know the reasons why things were happening and all that. That's kind of how you need to be in your brain too. So when you're looking at your shot and things aren't working for you, you know what to fix.
Yeah.
Or when you're going out to practice, you have an idea of what you're going to do and what needs to be done, and you're spending that time doing purposeful, very directed, you know, scripted things that translate to what you're going to do when you get into a game.
Yeah.
So it's not just a shoot around. It's you're working on shooting off the dribble, shooting off the catch. You're adding in defense. You're adding in different looks that you might face during the game. You're working on your free throws. You're working on finishes at the rim. You're throwing in some defense on that. You're getting some of the 3 pillars of practice that we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to be the one that does that. Unless you are, you know, very, you know, rich and can have somebody come and work with you every day that is your training coach. Yeah. And even in that scenario, you will not be as good as you would if you're able to coach yourself and analyze what you're doing, because you will know how to make those adjustments better than somebody else that is telling you what to do.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to these off-season training situations, you have to put together kind of maybe have like a post-season analyzation period where you kind of maybe write down some things that you need to work on, whether that's your shooting or attacking the basket, or this is the kind of player that you want to become. And then you can kind of start to put together some of the ways that you can execute that and have that be there by the time that you get to the next season. Maybe it's conditioning or whatever it is, but you have to have a plan. Yeah. Most people don't have a plan.
Yeah,
right?
They just go out and shoot around and then, okay, I'm going to work on this for a little bit, and then I'll work on that.
And when you're a kid, I mean, it's hard to go into it with kind of that more adult mindset of getting that stuff done. Yeah. But the people that really advance in basketball and don't rely just solely on athleticism or height or whatever it is, the ones that really advance are the ones that know that. And they're able to do that, and they've written out their plans. They have everything bulleted list, and you know they're ready to go when that off season comes. And you know if that's not what you're about, that's fine, but you won't see the results unless you do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you know, as Casey's talking there, I'm thinking about a young student of ours actually played on our basketball team this year. I coach high school basketball, and this young guy happened to play for us. And one of the things that we set up for him last year, he went all spring and all summer really working on his shooting skills, which he did a great job on that. But the other thing that we worked on is we worked on him attacking and getting to the basket and finishing. Those are important elements to remember when you're trying to get in the basket. You've got to get there and you've got to finish. And so he had several things that we worked on consistently. But we didn't stop there. One of the things that he did is that he would go to one of the local places where the basketball guys come to play each other on a regular basis. They play in the evenings, they play on weekends, and he went to those spots, and there was another one of our students who would go and play alongside of him. And what we found is when he got to the season, I kept asking him, are you doing this? Are you attacking the basket? Are you finishing? Yes, yeah, I am, Coach. And how are you doing? Well, he always would say, I'm okay. Well, what does that mean? Okay, and we'd talk to him a little more. But the thing that we found out is that when we got into the season, then he was started to show a side of him that we hadn't seen before. His shot was very pure and nice, and he probably averaged 12 points a game. with games that were 16 and 24 and like that throughout the season. So that was effective. But even more effective was that he was coming, and he was a right-hander. He was coming from the left or the right side of the floor with his left hand, and he could hesitate on that dribble and get the defender to kind of lock up for a moment and then go again. And he was finishing probably with 4 or 5 layups at the basket each game. Okay, sometimes they would play him to keep him from doing that, and of course he couldn't. Then he had to deal with some other way. But the important thing to remember is this: he was taking and practicing on a regular basis. Every week he was here and he was working on all those elements of his game. Then he would take it away and he would go to one of these courts where they have these games and play and try to do exactly the same thing. So when the season rolled around in November, he was ready.
That's hitting the 3 pillars of practice.
Yeah, it is. And go ahead.
And, you know, the other thing, too, is that the players that are successful and stick around and keep advancing up through the ranks, whether they're, you know, in 5th grade or in the NBA, they're the ones that use the offseason as this opportunity to really polish their game, advance their skills. You know, a couple of years ago, I was doing something with Taylor Griffin, who's Blake Griffin's brother.
Right.
And he was telling me how they spent the entire offseason right after this year that they were playing, that they spent this entire offseason developing their shooting. Right. So they were working on developing a mid-range game and even pushing it out to that NBA three-point range, which both of them really hadn't worked on very much because they relied on their size and their athleticism. You know, they're 6'8" and 6'10", and, you know, just big muscly dudes, and they were working on developing that outside game so that they could come back and not have to rely just on banging and driving to the hoop.
Sure.
They could have that extra thing going on. And sure enough, you know, for somebody like Blake Griffin, who he's struggling with some injuries the last, you know, period of time, but, you know, he's able to stay there as like an all-star even now, even though he's not the crazy athletic 22-year-old guy that he was, but he's able to still play at that super high level because he has these other skills that he keeps adding in, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that is something that you guys should be able to take in and think, okay, I'm going to advance my skills. I'm going to use this time in the offseason to really work on making my game better, and I'm going to have a plan. Yeah. That's the biggest part, I think, is having a plan, having a purpose, and executing that every day.
Let me go back and underline.
Okay, we got to hurry, though.
Okay, let me go back and underline one thing that I think is real important that we talked about early on, and that is this. Sometimes you don't know what it is that you need to work on. I mean, that's just the nature of the game. There are a lot of things to put in there. And so this is something that would be good to visit with your coach and say, Coach, I really want to put some time in the off season. What do you think that I should work on? And they will tell you, well, work on your shooting, work on your defense, or whatever. And then what you need to ask them is, how can I get that done? What is the best methods for me to use? And they can spell out for you, you need to be able to shoot off the dribble, okay? And most players, most high school players, don't do a very good job of shooting off the dribble. They can shoot off the catch, okay, and do a pretty good job. Maybe they can get to the basket and do a pretty good job. But shooting off the dribble where you go really hard and all of a sudden you're up in the air and you're shooting over the top of the defender, we don't do enough of that. And so those are the kind of things you need to have identified for you by somebody who has seen you play, like your coach or coaches, and they can give you information. Okay, these are the 3 things or 4 things or 5 things, whatever, that I think you should work on in the off season.
Well, I think having input from anybody that has observed you and that you respect their opinion, I think is good. I think you should always take all of that as, you know, a little grain of salt that you put into your recipe here.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's going to have an opinion. You also have to lay your analytics over the top of that as well. So, you know, I think it's good if a coach is saying, yeah, you need to work on your shooting off the dribble. Yes, put that on your list, work on that. But don't just say, okay, that's all I'm going to work on. Yeah. You need to say, okay, I'm going to become a better basketball player. I'm going to become the most versatile basketball player I can. Okay, the coach says that I need to work more on shooting off the dribble. I'm going to do that. I'm also going to learn how to create space off the dribble. I'm also going to learn how to move without the ball. You know, all these things that are important to you advancing your game. Take all that input, make that part of your plan.
Yeah, and something that kind of flashed into my mind as I was listening to Casey talk, be sure that you are talking to people whom you respect as basketball people. oftentimes, yeah, oftentimes there will be an Uncle Bill or somebody like that who say, boy, you really need to work on this for your game. And it may not be really that effective in making you a better basketball player. And everybody's going to have an opinion. If I talk to Casey, all right, Casey, this is what I think you ought to do in the off season. And if he doesn't have a real clear picture of what all that means, or I'm leading him in a different direction that he feels he needs to go, then he's going to waste a whole bunch of time. So respect the person that you are people, not person, but people that you may be talking to about how can I get my game going.
Yeah,
okay?
Well, that's what I'm saying about, like, trust your instincts a little bit too.
Yeah, truly.
Actually, Alan Stein, he's been tweeting out a bunch of stuff the last couple of days about how people, parents typically in the stands yell out stuff to their kids, and it's always this canned kind of cliche stuff like, that's 3 in the key, or move your feet on defense, or shoot it, or whatever it is. Yeah. And it's like they don't really have an idea what they're talking about, and it's like everybody says those same things, and it doesn't really mean anything. So, anyways, the take home on all of this. Let's wrap this up.
Before you do that,
oh boy,
let everybody know who Alan Stein is. Well, not everybody knows.
Well, he's like a professional shooting coach, or not shooting coach, but he's a professional conditioning and strength coach, and he's worked with all the guys in the NBA like Kevin Durant and Chris Paul and all these guys, and now he does like some motivational speaking and things like that as well. But I mean, he's a highly respected guy.
Yeah.
Anyways, the take home from all this is, after 20 minutes of chatting about this, is that you guys have to be your own best coach.
Yes.
You have to have a plan, and you have to execute it purposefully in the off season.
Purposefully, not perfectly, but purposefully.
And if you are doing that, and you're doing the 3 pillars of practice, and you are developing individual skill through the summer, you will be so much further ahead than your counterpart that is going out there and doing the shoot around, and casually approaching things. Okay. You will see, it will be a huge disparity between you guys. So that is what we're trying to impart to you guys. If you need to take time off after the end of the season, do that.
It's always a good idea to take several weeks and just chill and stay away from it, and then with your plan in mind, then start to get back into it and begin to build your game.
And maybe take that time to kind of think about what you want to do and analyze yourself. Yeah. And then execute that stuff.
Yeah.
And don't put it off. Don't postpone it, because you don't get that time back.
Yeah.
Now, your best time is right now. Okay. So let's move on.
Boy, that went on and on, didn't it? Okay.
And if your season's not over by the time we started, it is now, because it's okay. So thank you guys for listening to that. Hopefully it's helpful. Sometimes it's good just to hear people that have experience observing that and going through that themselves and telling you that, because at the time when you're 14, 15 years old, you might not have that perspective. Okay, so thank you guys for listening to that. If you guys have questions, hopefully you've been sending them to us, and we can answer them for you right now. Okay. Keep sending those in, because we're going to answer as many as we can before the end of the show. Asking it now is the best time, because usually by the end of the show, there's so many that we can't get to everybody. We want to try to get to as many people as possible. Make sure you guys check out shotscience.com and all of our social media stuff. But before we get into answering your guys' questions, we have a question for you. And that question is the same question that we ask every time we have a show, because it's very interesting to us.
It is.
And it gets us very excited. But that question is this:
where are you located in the world? We have people who are contacting us today from Holland, from San Francisco, and a number of other places. So let's hear where you're all from.
Yeah,
okay?
I think I saw Australia. Let us know if you're from Japan, if you're from South Africa, if you're from Mozambique, if you're from Sri Lanka.
Lithuania.
Or Lithuania.
There you go. We want to hear from the Lithuanians.
Oh, here we go. Andres Sims from Lithuania. Andres is here all the time, too.
All right.
AJ Copenhaver is from West Virginia.
Okay.
MJ Sartre is from Manitoba.
All right.
Andre Robin is from Illinois.
All right.
Oh, Andre Sims says, just kidding. Andre Sims, where are you from? You're here all the time, though. Our friend Zeno, he's from Amsterdam, and he said that I pronounced his name correctly, which is pretty rare. So let's get into answering, or at least asking some of these questions, and then answering them if we can.
Okay.
And you guys keep telling us where you're from.
All right.
And tell your friends and family to check us out, because that helps us grow Team Shot Science, and we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cara Jones says, sorry, I have to go it's time for dinner. Sorry about that.
Eat your dinner. You got to do that.
Alex says, how can I stop being so distracted by the cheerleaders while I play? They always try to talk to me, and they are all cute. How can I make it stop? Do I just stop playing basketball?
Stop talking to the cheerleaders. You can let them talk as much as they want, but don't pay any attention to them.
You must be one smooth dude to have the cheerleaders just
that's
all
true.
over you while you're playing.
Yeah.
You know, to be serious about it, like, you're going to have so many distractions and things going on during a basketball game. There's going to be the cheerleaders. There's going to be the people in the stands. There's going to be your parents. There's going to be the band. There's going to be the coach. All these things going on. You really do have to find like a space in your head where you can tune most of that stuff out.
Yeah.
And you can hear the things that are important, like your coach or your teammates or the referee. And, you know, all that other stuff. You know, the people that are distracted by that stuff are the ones that are not really focusing in. They're not as serious as they think they are. You know, it's just one of those things. And, you know, thanks for the funny comment. But
yeah. Well, one of the things is that usually if people are trying to talk to you and you make no response to them, then what happens is pretty soon they just they let it go. You know, it's really interesting for me is I can remember as a player, I almost never was aware of the crowd. I mean,
Andre Sim was from San Francisco. Sorry.
Oh, good.
He said that earlier. He was just joking about the Lithuania thing.
Oh, okay. Well, now I'm disappointed. Okay. Anyway, I can remember as a player not really being aware of anything from the crowd that was going on except maybe noise. You're tuned into your players or your teammates, and you're tuned into your coach's voice. I mean, that's kind of interesting how that all happens, is that when you're playing, you tune out a lot so you can tune in the things that really are meaningful for you. Yeah. And the cheerleaders may be meaningful for you, and if that is the case, then maybe you should hang up your shoes and just worry about the cheerleaders and not playing basketball.
Yeah, well,
I'm tongue-in-cheek on that.
One of the things, you and I went to the national championship game a couple years ago,
yep.
And that was one of the loudest, most packed stadiums that we have ever been to.
I mean, there was like 100,000 people.
Yeah, it was insane. And I don't think I've ever seen that many people in one building ever. Yeah. And I've been to some pretty big concerts and games and things like that. But that was very loud at times. It was, you know, a close game, and the players could hear their coaches and teammates and stuff. So if you are having problems at your little high school, that's something that you need to address with yourself, because if somebody in that setting can actually hear what's going on and run the plays and know what's going on with the referees and everything, I mean, that's not an excuse anymore.
Okay.
This one's from Zano. He says, can't work on just shooting because what happens when it's not falling? Exactly. That is a big deal. When you are a one-trick pony, or you don't have any versatility, then what do you do when something's not going for you?
And that's going to happen.
Or if you're facing somebody that shuts down some aspect of your game because maybe they're 6 inches taller than you and you can't get a shot off. What do you do at that point?
Yep.
You know?
And one of the things you want to keep in mind, if you have a pretty good stroke, is you never stop shooting the basketball. Because they're not falling, because it's just a matter of time when they start falling for you again. And so
and it becomes a mental thing too.
It does. It gets into your head, and you're worried, well, I can't hit anything, so I'm not shooting anymore. And there goes a lot of offense maybe from your team, that if you just keep hanging there, then they start to fall.
Yeah.
That's just like you watch the Warriors or some of the other NBA teams play, or college teams. Oftentimes what will happen is they'll miss 5 or 6. In fact, I think the other night it was Thompson was 1 for 9.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, boy, there it was, and he was just putting them down like crazy. So,
yeah, well, you have to think about it. There's these guys that they make 8 for 10 or 8 for 9 on 3-pointers one game, and unless they're shooting like 90%, they're going to have a game where they're shooting 1 for 9.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
So you have to expect that every once in a while you're going to have a problem getting the ball in the basket, whether it's based off of fatigue or some minor tick that you got going on.
Or watching the cheerleaders. That's you're going to keep that in mind.
Or the cheerleaders are just really in your ear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things that you can't be that granular about it. You can't just go, oh man, I missed 1 shot, or oh man, I missed 2 shots. You have to think every shot is a new opportunity, and every shot is in when you shoot it. If you're worried about, if you're shooting it and you're like, oh, that's not good, then you've already checked yourself out.
Yeah.
Or if you're shooting it, you're like, oh, I missed that last one. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we talk about to all of our players when we're talking about this is that you can't make a shot you never take.
Yeah.
And so if you take and all of a sudden pull your horns in, you're not shooting anymore, and you're the best shooter on the team, your team's not going to win that game because they're without you. You're checked out on them.
Okay, so let's get into this Andre Sims question series that he has here.
Got a bunch of them here, huh?
He says, what is the best way for me to develop my basketball IQ and how to play on a team I haven't played with before? I've gotten into playing rec league basketball later in life and never was coached, so sometimes I don't move off the ball on offense very well. My defense is good and I'm able to create my own shot on offense, but off the ball I feel lost sometimes.
You know, that's an interesting question to ask because there's an awful lot of players who are young players who do not know how to play when they're away from the basketball. In fact, one of the things...
It's sometimes players that are...
It's probably all players, but...
Yeah.
One of the things that we try to teach all of our players
Westbrook.
on our basketball team is you are just as important when you're off the ball as you are when you're on the ball. Things that you can be doing. One of the things that we're big on is if the ball is moving on one side of the floor, players on the opposite side of the floor are moving as well. They're exchanging positions. They come down the screen and one comes up. We keep them busy so that their defenders are busy. They can't help out quite as much there. But the thing that's really important for you to remember here is the fact that help side is not a rest side. That doesn't mean that's where you take a rest, because oftentimes what you may find is that, especially against zones, if all of a sudden you flash into the middle, you can catch a basketball and put that thing in the hole real quick before anything happens.
Or you can pull defenders away from some other player, or away from the ball, or create an opening for somebody else to attack,
or screen. There's all kinds of screens that you can use to help other people as well.
If you're ever just standing in one space, and unless it's like a scripted play that you guys are running or whatever, but if you're ever just standing in one space, you might as well just reach out and shake your defender's hand and say, go be free, because you're not going to do anything that makes their job worthwhile. You're just standing there. You might as well sit down. And I know you're asking about basketball IQ and stuff like that. Basketball IQ is one of those things that you develop over time with experience playing and observing and all that stuff. And there really is no shortcut to that other than consuming the information. So one of the things that we would say is go check out our video. I think that we even have a playlist on moving without the ball.
Yes.
And I think it might even be below this video in the description where we talk about the different kind of V cuts, L cuts, backdoor cuts, flashing, stuff like that. Screening is another thing to do. Setting up your defender to create a lead and then get an opening to catch a pass or something like that. Those are all things that you can do. And if you're ever finding yourself just standing still, there is something that you can be doing. Right. I mean, and if you are just standing there and the defense is complacent, then you can do something about that. But if you're just standing there and they're complacent, you haven't taken advantage of them.
Right.
And you should be.
Right. Getting back to that IQ question too, like Casey said, this IQ in basketball, probably like most every sport that you can imagine, is developed through participation.
Yeah.
Every time you go on the floor and you play, there are different things that happen to you and for you and against you as well that you learn from. Oh, okay, I got that now.
Well,
okay, and you develop that IQ, and that really helps you become a more effective player because you recognize situations. Oh, okay, here it comes. Or this is a time when I can make a back cut on this guy. And when you develop that kind of IQ, then you become a more effective player. But it's a situation where it's not like textbook, where you can go sit down and read a textbook and develop your IQ. You develop your IQ by playing the game and listening to coaches when they tell you different kinds of things. It's amazing. We have a particular group this year that we've coached, and we had a pretty good season. We went 12-6. And at the beginning of the season, the other coach and myself were talking about, well, we'll probably get maybe 5 wins, okay? Because we didn't think our kids had very much, their IQ wasn't very good. And not only that, is that you would say something to them, and they'd turn around and immediately make the same mistake again. And, okay, and you begin to, oh, wow. How come they can't remember 5 minutes ago I told them this is what you need to do, and they do something different? Okay, and so that they were just kind of learning how to put it together. And as they got further along the season, they got better, and they got better and better. Well, they still made a lot of dumb mistakes sometimes, but their IQ improved significantly.
Shots fired.
Yeah. Boom.
I've been watching some of the curling and stuff on the Olympics and everything, and I think I watch it every time that they have Winter Olympics because it's really interesting or something. And I have no idea how a lot of it works or anything, but I've watched like hours and hours of it. But that's like the thing. If like I wanted to get better at it or understand it more, I would have to get out there and do it and apply myself. And then I would actually start to get an IQ about it. Now, even though I've watched a ton of it and I've listened to the commentators and all that, like I still like don't get it, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, IQ, that's one of those things you develop through experience and information.
Yeah.
And again, it's good to have one of those analytical minds where you are really just kind of consuming that, but also breaking it down and looking at the whys, whats, and hows and all that stuff. Okay. Zeno says, basketball season is never over. You might not have any games, but the season never ends. Well, seasons end, but sure, basketball never stops.
Basketball doesn't stop, but seasons do. Okay.
Jay Berlin says, what's up? What's up, Jay? Batman Robin says, they say I need to know my game/playing style to be better at basketball. How do I find it?
Well, if you're talking about a style that you've developed or a style you want to develop, or this is a style of playing that your team plays.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say is that people put this heavy emphasis on what position you play.
Yeah.
And, you're saying game playing / style, your game playing style or whatever. And, a lot of the times when they say that, they mean, are you a accomplished shooter? Are you a person that attacks the basket? We think that is not a good approach.
Yeah.
Right? What we think is good is being as versatile a player as you possibly can be. So you know how to do everything, and you can do a little bit of everything really well. So even if you're 5'4", you can play in the post, and you have a bunch of post moves that you work on and that are there no matter what, and counter moves to those, and you're good to go. Yeah. You also know how to rebound. You also know how to play defense against people that are bigger than you. And on the opposite end, if you are, 6'10", you can still step out on the perimeter and you can play the perimeter game.
Sure.
And you can also make your free throws, and you can also attack off the dribble and do all these things that are not associated with these big, tall guys.
Yeah.
So when it comes to game playing style, whatever, I think it comes down to having the individual skills developed to the point where you are effective in any situation that you're put in.
Or as many as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's very specific, I think.
Yeah.
Duke fan says, what is the best way to shake pregame jitters?
There's not anything wrong with pregame jitters. That means that your body and your mind and whatnot is getting ready, and you're not really sure how things are going to go, and nobody is in the beginning. And so you're a little bit shaky, and I think that's good. The ones that I really worry about are the guys who look like they're too loose. They're not really, and the game changer for me is I watch warm-ups pretty closely. And when I'm watching the team warm up, I get a feel for where they are mentally and physically because of what they're doing, how hard they're working, whether they're screwing around, having a good time. That is a time where you kind of get yourself ready to play. And I think the jitters is just something that you get when you're a little bit unsure about what to expect.
Yeah.
And that gets you ready to play. And I think that's great. And usually the jitters disappear within about a minute to a minute and a half, and you get into the game and you're into the flow, and now you're not really worried about much of anything except just playing hard. And so I wouldn't worry too much about it. In fact, like I said before, I don't think it's bad for you to have jitters.
Yeah.
I like to see those guys who are out there warming up before the game is played, who are going hard and they're talking a lot to their teammates, and there's a lot of movement, a lot of action and whatnot, because I know when the game starts, that's how we're going to be. But whenever you go out there and you're kind of just kind of messing around and laughing and having a good time, I will often turn to the other coach and tell him, Coach, I think we're in trouble. Our warm-up is awful.
Yeah.
And usually that's the case. Maybe the first 5 minutes or maybe even the first quarter, we just don't play well.
Yeah, I have a very vivid memory of when I think I was in 8th grade or something like that, and we were playing in an AAU game, and we were playing up against, I think it was like NJB or something, very specific warm-up routine where we did some layups, did some game speed, game intensity stuff or whatever, and they were over there doing layup lines for 15 minutes, which was essentially like a dunk line, and this is for 8th graders, dunk line and like circus shot line, and they were just so loose, and we came out and we crushed them by like 30 points. And they never got in a flow, they never got chemistry, they started getting on each other, and I think a lot of it just started in that first warm-up session because we were ready to go, and they didn't know what hit them. And I still remember that. And that was the game where that guy was telling me he was the number 3 rated 8th grader in California. And I was like, that's great, man. But
you're doing really well with that.
We crushed him by like 30 points. So, it's one of those things where set the right tone. And when it also comes to pregame jitters, some of it is like the long game where you have to make sure that you feel like your skills are there and you have prepared yourself for games. Yeah. If you show up and you haven't worked on your game or you lack a skill, I would get a little jittery too. And the other thing to do too is maybe do some mental rehearsal stuff. Kind of visualize yourself being in the game and being successful and executing these things. And when you get into the game, then you have some confidence built up, even though you haven't been there yet, but you kind of have already gone through a little bit of that stuff already.
Well, there's another side to all of this that just happened to occur to me. One of the things that is really a problem for a lot of players is they're being too ready, and they're really going through the name escaped me this moment, but.
I don't know what you're even talking about.
I know. But where you have this what is the? Oh gosh, I'm gonna let it go.
Are you having the mental breakdown here too?
I'm just having a faulty memory all of a sudden. But sometimes you get too ready. I remember this happened to us. I used to coach football as well, high school football, and
it's like overzealous or something.
And we had to play this team that had a really good player that went on and played in the NFL and was really a good player. And they were huge, and there was about 60 of them, and there were about 25 of us, and we're waiting to go out on the field, and they're right there behind us, and they're yelling and screaming, and using all the language that you've ever heard in your life, what they're going to do to our guys. And
typical football player.
And so I turned around and I walked back along our guys, and I in a very calm voice I said, "Just relax. They're just banging their drums. They're just banging their drums." And what I was getting at is that they're trying to intimidate you with all of this. And what happens is that you go through a situation. What is the thing in our body that juices us up when we play?
Like adrenaline?
Adrenaline. They're having an adrenaline rush right now. Now, what really happens is that when you have this adrenaline really pumping early on, you go through what is called adrenaline fatigue. Yeah. And adrenaline fatigue means that you've got nothing in your gas tank anymore. And so I kept telling them, just relax, just relax. They're just banging the drums. It'll be okay. And so we went out on the floor, and the first play of the game, that guy that was in the NFL went for 6. I mean, the first play of the game. Okay, just relax, just relax. And they kept yelling and screaming and doing their whole thing. And we kind of held her on. Finally, we scored, and then we scored again, and then we scored again. And you could just see in the last quarter of the game, they were dead. They had no gas in their tank because they were going through adrenaline fatigue. And I think that's really an important consideration. Don't get too jacked up because you can spend all that adrenaline early, and it can be your enemy.
Yeah, okay. Right. Enough football.
Okay, all right.
Okay, this one is from Ronit, who says, "Coach, I am 15, 6'4", and play power forward. Any tips for an undersized post player? I'm from India.
Well, you know, that's an interesting.
I mean, 15, 6'4", that's not too bad, man.
No. And you might at 17, you might be 6'8". You don't really know that, okay? And so the point that I think is important is,
forget about size.
Yeah, forget about size. What you really want to do is learn how to execute moves and
counter moves.
And counter moves. One of the things that we talk about almost every day with our students is this: basketball is a foot game more than it is, or as much as it is, a hand game. And so when you learn how to use your feet, you become a much more effective player in using your hands when you play. So good footwork is one of the things that we put a lot of premium on when we're coaching guys. Okay?
You can neutralize basically anybody with good footwork.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can see that in all these guys that are incredible ball handlers like Chris Paul or Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
Those guys have great footwork that goes along with their obvious abilities with their upper body to execute that stuff.
Yeah.
Or somebody like Tim Duncan, or Tim Duncan was not the most athletic, quickest guy, but he is considered probably the greatest power forward ever because he was able to just take those guys on with his footwork being so in place. So, that's really one of those big deals, is focus on the footwork, especially if you're a big guy, because a lot of times big guys struggle with that because of coordination issues, or the fact that that's not something that they really work on when they're coming up in the game, because they always get pigeonholed into, you're playing in the post, that's all you got to do. You just got to stand there and we'll throw the ball to you.
And get the rebounds for us.
So go check out our videos on post moves, and just remember that you want to have a post move ready for every look that the defense gives you. And then after you've exhausted them on that, you have a counter move. So after you've done that little drop step, you have like a spin move or a step back, or you have that power move to the middle with that baby jump hook. You also have an up and under move that you can get them on, because they've fallen for that first move so many times. So just make sure you're working on that. Another thing is to make sure that when somebody is passing you the ball in the post, that you meet the pass.
Yeah, that's so often.
Just one small step towards the ball. You create separation from the defense, and then that gives you an opportunity to kind of get a feel on where they are, but it also shortens pass, and it gives you that count to figure out what's going on too.
Well, one of the things that we teach all of our post players is what we call a release step. And the release step is actually something where the ball is being thrown to you, and you are aware it's coming, and you take this little short hop, which creates space between you and the defensive person, and it also makes it much more difficult for them to get their hand on that basketball as well.
Okay, Duke fan is from South Central Los Angeles. Awesome.
Okay.
That's south of us.
That's
did I say where we were from? We're from Santa Cruz, California, which is south of San Francisco on the coast. So that lets you know where we are in the world.
Okay.
Batman Robin says, do you really need to have a lot of moves in your arsenal? I've heard you only need several moves, then have counters for them.
Okay.
You probably heard that from us.
Well, if you were with us very much, you have heard that from us, because that's kind of how we look at things. Not every move that there is in basketball, and there are hundreds of them, are going to fit you as an individual or the game that you play. And so what you want to do, and we have this discussion with our players all the time when we're talking about what moves they should work on. You should have maybe 2 or 3 moves and a couple of counters off of those moves, and that usually will suffice as a player in general. You look at some guys, where you take a look at Kyrie Irving, he's got every move in the book, okay, and he will beat you with every move in the book.
But he's worked for them.
Yeah, he has worked for it, and he's a super athletic individual with supreme confidence, and so that's why he and guys like Curry can be so effective, because they have that confidence.
And you should always build this progressively. You shouldn't look at this list of attack moves where you have like the crossover, you have the flat back, you have the scissor dribble, or whatever it is, and say, okay, today I'm going to work on all of these, and I'm going to master them all at the same time. That's a bad approach. But if you take 1 or 2 and you really work on those and you master them and you get them in, then you just have to do maintenance stuff on them to keep them where they are or advancing.
Yes, exactly.
Then you can pull in the other things. Oh, I need to work on this attack, retreat, attack, or whatever it is that you want to put in there, and you can add in a new one. And that's what people like Kyrie Irving do, is that they had something that they really mastered, and then they add on as they go.
Okay.
If you look at it all at one chunk, that can be very overwhelming, and you'll never be as successful attack. Kind of approaching it that way.
Well, AJ's got some information there that's cool.
AJ Copenhaver says, "Thanks for the tips. My team won our conference championship, and I won MVP. Thank you so much. Awesome.
All right, thank you.
You won MVP. That's pretty rad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Send us some pictures of that stuff when you guys are like on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever. We'd like to see that stuff. That really is cool.
Absolutely.
Andrew Robin says, "How to improve your handle on the ball under tough defensive pressure? Any drills I can do to improve that, or just experience?"
I think a lot of that really has to do with experience, knowing what people like to do to knock the ball loose, and how you've got to take and
pillar number 2.
And what?
Pillar number 2.
Well, it is pillar number 2, and the things that is important in pillar number 2 is that you practice all of this stuff at game speed. Okay,
and add in a defender.
And adding in defenders, and then it's time for you to step on to 3. Pillar number 3, which, let's take it to the floor. Let's go play.
Yeah,
okay.
and one of the reasons that we are big proponents of the 3 pillars, which is that's basically what we came up with, was naming them these 3 pillars, is because you need to prepare yourself for every situation when you step into a game. If you're there and you are feeling like, I have never been in this situation before, that's a problem. You should feel like you've always been there before. And that's one of the reasons why, and you need to take it to probably the extremes that you wouldn't necessarily feel like you would be in all the time. So if you're working on your defense and you're talking about somebody that is a tough defensive pressure, have somebody overplaying you in that way, where you're in pillar number 2, and maybe they're creating a way more contact than you think that you're normally used to, or they're pushing you or shoving you, reaching in, doing all that stuff, because that will only make you more prepared for when you see that stuff that's maybe less extreme in a game setting, because the referees aren't always going to call it the way that you think they are.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is that you're not going to have a meltdown as soon as that stuff starts happening.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot of times, where if people are getting roughed up or whatever, then they mentally lose it.
Yeah.
And if you're capable of keeping it together, you will be much more able to be successful.
Right. I agree with that. Let's look at Orange 13 there, Casey.
Where we're right here?
Yep.
Orange 13 says, you can ask these questions.
I know, but
Orange 13 says, "Should I play AAU? I feel like it's not beneficial to me, and I'd be better off training. Everyone else is saying that I should play." We talked about that a little bit last week.
Did.
So let's do the abbreviated version of that.
The abbreviated version of it is that you've got to take a look at the reasons that you might play. Number 1 is, do you figure, most of those AAU programs are kind of built around the idea that you're going to take and go and play in front of coaches, and they're going to find you and they're going to give you a 4-year scholarship to play basketball. That's not really how it's going to happen.
That almost never happens.
No. Here's the situation, is that AAU basketball, you want to take and, first of all, find out what their program is all about. Sometimes it's just about that, going to tournaments around the country and trying to play before college coaches. And it costs big money to do that, okay? And to be very honest, there probably are not very many people who are able to get college, had a mental breakdown.
College
there.
recruits? Scholarships.
A college scholarship based on what they see there. When coaches go, and I've been at a lot of those, and you see that all the college coaches you've ever seen on television, they're all there and they're all looking, but they are there to look at 1 or 2 individuals. They're not there to look at Joe Blow from Santa Cruz, California, to come there and play, okay? They already know who they're going to go look and watch for. The other thing is that sometimes that you get involved with teams where the coaches don't do any real coaching. They put your name in the book and you play, okay?
You pay a bunch of money to play.
You pay a bunch of money to do that. And sometimes what happens, and this is not the very nice part of it either, is that there are a group of players who maybe are pretty good, and they'll encourage you to come and be a part of it, and you pay your big bucks to play, and you help pay for those guys who maybe can't pay for it, and you end up in a situation where you might go to a tournament and play for 5 minutes. I mean, that's ridiculous, okay? And so you need to investigate all of that to find out, how is this team operated?
Yeah, you got to do your due diligence to make sure that you are the one getting the benefit out of it.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't have to be, the take home is that you need to make sure that they are working on and promoting individual skill development.
Exactly right.
And if that's not part of it, if there's no practices, if there is just games, if there's no guarantee that you'll get playing time, those are all red flags.
Or if you're playing for a basketball team who are collecting players from 300 and 400 miles away to come and play at tournaments, you know you're not going to be a focus there. You're going to just take and be one of the buds is all you're going to be.
And, you know, it might be really exciting, too, to play with those guys or to say that we were at this thing and we won this thing or whatever. But is it really going to help you in advancing your basketball abilities or your development?
Yep.
That's probably very questionable. And the other thing is, too, is that, you know, you have to do your research into this stuff because they might tell you that it's going to be about this, and then you find out later that it's not.
Exactly.
That said, playing on an AAU team, it can be great, and you can find you know, many situations where it is. There are just some very scary ones that, or you know, sad situations where that doesn't happen to be the case. Individual skill development should be your focus, and you can develop that by yourself better than you can if you're on a team that just plays games. But playing games is good too.
Or if you're on a team, and it might be an AAU team, it might be just a simple club team where coaches coach you. And when Casey and his brothers were playing, and we ran this program locally, we had 8 teams. All of those teams, and there were different grade levels, all of those teams were coached by guys who had been varsity coaches, and they coached the players, and everybody played at least half the game. Even if we looked like we were going to win, and if we put these other guys in, we're probably not going to win. That was not the question. We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to play and develop their game. And there was probably a period there when we were doing that where we probably had over 100 players that were developed and played high school basketball and did great jobs. Some of them went on to play beyond that.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, M. Sarek says, what's the best off-season sport to be involved in that benefits the basketball season? For example, track or volleyball?
Volleyball.
Yeah, I played volleyball.
Yeah, volleyball is awesome because it's a foot game. It's also a hitting game, but it's a foot game, and you have to be able to move your feet to get to the right spots in the right time.
It's really helpful for
jumping,
athleticism, and lateral movement and things like that, and anticipation. So yeah, I mean that's really, there's a lot of sports that really, you know, certain aspects of them definitely translate.
Yeah.
Zeno says, I'd say the best one would be basketball. Well, yeah, some people like to you know, vary up things a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Oop, I lost it there. Let's answer some of these real quick here. We already answered that one, Nick.
Okay.
Yep. Zeno says you can't mention footwork and not mention Hakeem. Yeah, Hakeem Olajuwon. Yeah. I mean, that's
a
an
perfect
obvious
example of the footwork that we're talking about. Yeah.
Philip Cohen says, how can I execute post moves well and effective?
Go look at our videos.
Yep.
We've got them right there for you.
Practice and consistency and doing the 3 pillars of practice. I mean, there's no short way around that stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, we're going to answer one more of these here. Let's do Josh Levitt, who says this. Hey, Coach, just tuning into the video. Does this video address weightlifting in the off-season? What are your thoughts on it? Okay.
That's your program there, Casey.
Yeah. So there seems to be a very heavy kind of emphasis on weight training in basketball, especially these days, where young players are thinking that they need to get into the weight room, and that's going to make a huge difference for them when they're in middle school or high school or whatever. And to me, that is such a huge mistake. You have to look at what is the cost benefit of that stuff. And when it comes to weight training, you are a young developing person, probably with limited time. If you're going to spend an hour or 2 hours in the weight room and not get that time spending it on developing your individual skills, you will not get as much of a payoff as you think you will.
Yeah.
More time spent on skill development will advance you further than time spent on conditioning or strength training. Right. Mostly strength training. Conditioning is definitely an important part of everything.
Exactly.
But if you think that getting into the weight room is going to make you go from a Division III to a Division I player over skill development and having the skills, you are sorely mistaken.
Yeah.
I will say once you get into your later teens, or especially when you move into college and things like that time period, if you're a college player, they build in time for you to work on weight training and things like that.
Sure.
And that's a different scenario, and that's fine. But I think if you're in high school, or especially if you're in middle school, your time is better spent at individual skill development, conditioning, and athletic training.
Exactly
right.
Yep.
And if you're focusing more on the athletic conditioning and stuff like that, that's probably a mistake. You need to really have a very solid amount of skill development, right?
Exactly.
Because if you can't put the ball in the hole, it doesn't matter if you can bench 305.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know a few local players
or 315.
Who are super athletic. They're not really very big, maybe 6 feet tall, but they're super athletic and speed, and they can get up and down the floor, but they can't put the ball in the hole.
And to be honest, you can get by a lot with a little knowledge of leverage more than you can with a lot of time spent on strength.
Yeah, exactly right.
And you can see that translates all the way up through into the NBA when you got people like Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo that they get there and there's no way those guys could bench over their body weights.
Yeah, right.
And now they're top level players. But that's one of those things. Level up into basketball, but it's not that important otherwise. Okay, so that's going to do it for us today, you guys. But before you go, we want to ask you guys a question. That question is, where in the world are you guys from?
Exactly.
Tell us where you guys are from. That makes us really happy to know that you guys are from all over the world. Second question is this. Since your season is wrapping up, or we think it is, here, we want to know, what is one aspect of your game that you want to have greatly improved or developed by the time next season rolls around?
Yeah, that's really cool. You
just
want to
wanna
be
know.
a different player next season.
Yeah, we want to know what is the number one thing and get to work on that stuff.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys answer those two questions. Make sure you check out shotscience.com. Get a t-shirt if you will. That really helps us out a lot.
Yeah.
Check out all the vertical jump training stuff or just the regular training gear there. And make sure you follow us on all of our social media stuff. And we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.